What if you could silence the noise of the world? Imagine a life where the opinions, judgments, and expectations of others no longer affected you, where your peace is no longer dictated by the chaos around you. In a world where people are constantly seeking approval, vying for attention, and trying to control others, there is an immense power in simply not caring. The true masters of power throughout history weren't the loudest, the most emotional, or the most eager for validation. They were the ones who knew that the ultimate power lies in emotional control, silence, and detachment. The more you care about what others think, the more vulnerable you become. But what if you could break free from this cycle? What if you could disconnect from the emotional manipulation of others and in doing so regain control over your life? This is where Machiavellian strategy comes in. Machiavelli, the master tactician, understood the importance of emotional distance and how those who can control their own emotions and detach from the opinions of others wield the greatest power. Silence is not weakness, it is the ultimate strategy. In this world, those who remain unreadable, unshaken, and indifferent are the ones who control the narrative. The ability to not care is not about becoming cold or robotic. It's about strategically choosing when to engage, when to remain silent, and when to assert yourself. True power comes from mastering emotional detachment and using it as your greatest weapon. In this video, you will learn how to stop caring what others think, not because you've given up, but because you now understand the power of silence and emotional control. Your journey to unshakable control begins now. Welcome to Dark Power, where we unlock the secrets of psychological strategy, emotional control, and Machiavellian principles. This channel is dedicated to those who want to master power dynamics, control their emotions, and navigate life with calculated precision. We dive into the minds of history's most powerful figures, offering actionable strategies to help you outsmart others, remain unshaken, and reclaim your personal power. If you're tired of seeking validation and ready to take control of your destiny, Dark Power is your ultimate guide to psychological mastery and strategic dominance. Subscribe now and unlock your full potential. 1. The power of emotional detachment. In a world that thrives on constant validation, emotional detachment is a superpower. Most people live in a constant cycle of seeking approval, attention, and recognition from others, unknowingly handing away their peace and power in the process. Machiavelli understood this well. To maintain control over one's life, you must first control your emotional responses. Emotional detachment isn't about becoming cold or indifferent to the world. It's about mastering your emotions rather than being controlled by them. When you react emotionally to people, situations, or external pressures, you lose control of the narrative. You allow others to influence your inner state. And when your emotions are triggered, you become vulnerable. This vulnerability opens the door for manipulation. Think about it. Have you ever made a rash decision in anger or regret? Have you ever allowed someone's opinion to affect your mood, even if just for a moment? That's the emotional leash we all unknowingly place around ourselves. Machiavelli believed that the ability to remain composed, especially in the face of chaos, was one of the most powerful tools a person could possess. He didn't advise heartlessness. Rather, he understood that emotions are often a weakness that others will use to their advantage. The moment you lose your emotional control, others can exploit your reactions. For example, consider a situation at work where someone undermines you in front of colleagues. The typical response is to argue, defend your honor, or prove them wrong. But this only signals weakness. By reacting emotionally, you hand the other person the upper hand. Instead, imagine remaining calm. You don't need to react immediately. You let the silence linger. And in that moment, you shift the balance of power. When you are unshaken, unbothered, and composed, you send a clear message. You are not someone who can be swayed by petty emotions. Emotional detachment is also about creating boundaries. You must stop allowing others' actions or words to dictate how you feel. When you stop chasing approval, you stop giving others the power to shape your emotional world. Detach from the need for validation, and you'll begin to feel a sense of inner peace that cannot be disturbed. By mastering emotional detachment, you reclaim your control. This is the first step in becoming untouchable, unbothered and in complete command of your own narrative. 2. The art of frame control. Every interaction, every conversation, every moment you spend with someone is a battle for control, a battle to define the narrative. The concept of frame control is simple. It's about shaping how others perceive you and the situation to your advantage. In any social, personal, or professional dynamic, there are two types of people: those who define the frame and those who fall into it. The one who controls the frame controls the outcome. In the Machiavellian mindset, this is a vital tool for survival and success. The moment you allow someone else to set the terms of an interaction, you've already surrendered power. But the person who remains calm, strategic, and deliberate can shift the frame in their favor, bending reality to suit their needs. Frame control isn't about dominating others with force or arrogance. It's about creating a perception that benefits you and keeps you in a position of power. Let's look at an example. Imagine you're in a meeting at work and someone questions your ability to perform a task. Their words can make you feel defensive, insulted, or inferior. That's the frame they've set. They've positioned themselves as superior, and you're now reacting from that place of perceived inferiority. The moment you react emotionally, you reinforce their frame, and they win. Now let's flip it. What if, instead of reacting, you remain calm, stand tall, and respond with a simple, confident statement like, "I understand your concern, but I'm confident in my approach. I'll show you the results soon enough." In that instant, you've shifted the frame. You've created a space where they now need to prove their position rather than you defending yours. You've taken control of the conversation, and you've done so without anger, defensiveness, or ego. This is frame control in action. Machiavelli understood that power lies in the ability to define the terms of engagement. In any situation, there are always underlying dynamics. The one who controls the frame defines the rules of the interaction. The subtle art of frame control means you're not just reacting to others. You're setting the tone, the expectations, and the outcome. This is a skill that can be applied in professional settings, social dynamics, and personal relationships alike. In the world of power and influence, the person who holds the frame is the one who decides the narrative. Frame control doesn't just put you in a position of strength, it makes you unpredictable and unshakable. And as you practice it, you'll realize just how much influence you truly have over the course of your interactions. 3. The power of silence. In a world that thrives on noise, constant chatter, opinions, and distractions, there is one thing that can disrupt the entire flow of interaction: silence. The Machiavellian mind understands the raw power of silence, not just as the absence of words, but as a strategic tool that can manipulate others and dictate the pace of any situation. When used correctly, silence can become the most powerful weapon in your arsenal, allowing you to control emotions, perceptions, and outcomes without saying a word. Silence has a psychological effect that words cannot match. When someone expects a response from you, when they anticipate that you will engage emotionally or intellectually, your refusal to do so creates discomfort. This discomfort is a psychological tool. It makes others uncertain, off balance, and often forces them to confront their own insecurities. The powerful person understands that silence doesn't make them weak, it makes them untouchable. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you're in a confrontation with someone who is trying to provoke you. They insult you, try to push your buttons, or question your credibility. The typical response might be to argue, defend yourself, or retaliate with your own words. However, by reacting emotionally, you hand the power back to them. Instead, imagine you stay silent. You look them in the eye, unflinching, and say nothing. What happens next? The silence you create forces them to fill the void. They'll either feel the pressure to explain themselves, apologize, or change their tone to regain control. In that silence, you've gained the upper hand. Your calmness, your indifference, makes them uncomfortable because they don't know how to react. You shifted the power dynamic. The moment you stop giving them a response, they no longer have the upper hand. Silence is your response, and that response is far more powerful than words. Machiavelli knew that the truly powerful do not over-explain, over-justify, or react to every provocation. They remain composed and allow the situation to unfold on their terms. By withholding a reaction, you force others to come to you, to try to understand your silence, and ultimately, to respect your position. It is this strategic use of silence that places you in control. You dictate the conversation, you set the emotional tone, and you remain the one unshaken and untouched by the chaos around you. The next time you are faced with a situation that calls for emotional engagement, remember, silence is your power. Let it be a tool of control, not an absence of strength. The quietest person in the room is often the one who commands the most respect, and Machiavellian strategy knows this well. 4. Emotional manipulation and how to defend against it. Emotions are the currency of human interaction. They are what drive decisions, shape perceptions, and influence behaviors. But what if you could stop being manipulated by them? What if you could flip the script, using emotions to control others rather than allowing them to control you? This is where emotional manipulation comes into play, and understanding it is the key to protecting your power. Machiavelli understood that emotional manipulation was one of the most potent tools used by those in power. Leaders, politicians, and even friends and family members often use emotions as a means of controlling others. They know that people act impulsively when emotions are triggered. They know that when someone's anger, guilt, or fear is stirred, logic takes a back seat. This is where they strike. Imagine a situation where someone criticizes you in front of a group, using a calculated remark designed to provoke a sense of shame or embarrassment. The natural instinct is to defend yourself, to react emotionally, and to prove them wrong. However, in doing so, you allow them to control the narrative. They've manipulated your emotions, and you've taken the bait. But there's a way out. The first rule of emotional manipulation is to recognize it for what it is. When someone tries to pull your strings, whether through guilt, anger, or praise, your goal should be to stay emotionally detached. If you can remain calm and composed, they can't manipulate you. Their words will fall flat, and they will be forced to either escalate their tactics or retreat. The more you remain unaffected, the more you take back control. Take another example. A colleague at work constantly tries to use guilt to get you to take on extra tasks. They play on your empathy and make you feel like you'll be letting them down if you don't help. This is emotional manipulation at its finest. The key to defending against this tactic is to assert your boundaries without apology. Rather than saying, "I can't do this because I don't want to disappoint you," simply say, "I have other priorities right now." By doing this, you remain calm, firm, and in control of your emotions. You don't allow the manipulator to evoke guilt, and you don't back down from your stance. Machiavellian thinking teaches that emotional control is the ultimate form of power. When you stop letting others dictate your emotional state, you regain control over yourself and the situation. Emotional manipulation no longer works because you are the one in the driver's seat, unshaken, unmoved by emotional attacks, and strategically ahead of the game. 5. Strategic detachment and the art of not caring. There's a common belief that empathy, compassion, and being deeply connected to others is the key to living a fulfilled life. But Machiavelli knew that the secret to maintaining power and ultimately peace lies in strategic detachment. To truly master control over your life, you must learn how to detach from the emotional turmoil of others, from the constant need for approval, and from the belief that others' judgments can define your worth. Yet not caring is not a sign of weakness. It is in fact a powerful weapon. Strategic detachment involves choosing to disconnect from situations and people that drain your energy and manipulate your emotions. In relationships, whether personal or professional, we often get tangled up in the expectations and judgments of others. We feel obligated to explain ourselves, defend our decisions, or justify our actions. This is exactly what the manipulator wants: to tie you to their narrative, to control how you react, and to dictate the emotional outcome. But when you detach from this need for approval, you no longer play by their rules. You stop allowing others to define your emotional landscape. When someone criticizes you, instead of reacting with anger or defensiveness, you remain calm. When people attempt to manipulate your emotions, you stop playing their game. Detaching from emotional triggers doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means becoming aware of how others use emotions to control you and refusing to give them that power. Machiavelli's teachings emphasize self-sufficiency and autonomy as the cornerstones of power. The most successful individuals throughout history didn't rely on external validation. They didn't need the approval of others to feel strong or worthy. Instead, they were masters of their own emotions, acting from a place of internal power. This internal power comes from choosing not to care about other people's judgments or opinions. For example, when someone criticizes your actions or choices, instead of feeling the need to justify yourself, you can simply respond with silence or a calm, "That's your opinion and I respect it." You don't need to defend or explain yourself, because you are already confident in your own decision-making. The more you practice strategic detachment, the stronger and more impervious you become to the whims of others. You stop being swayed by their approval or rejection, and in turn, you gain complete control over your life, your choices, and your emotions. To master Machiavellian power, you must learn to care less about what others think, to detach from the constant emotional highs and lows that others try to impose on you. This is the true art of being untouchable, mastering the emotional landscape, not by attaching to it, but by detaching from it altogether. 6. The art of outsmarting others. In any power struggle, the most dangerous player is the one who isn't reacting to the moves of others, but rather the one who is anticipating those moves and strategically countering them. Machiavellian thinking is not just about outmuscling your opponents, it's about outsmarting them. Understanding their desires, their fears, and their weaknesses allows you to manipulate the situation, all while keeping your hands clean and your emotions in check. Outsmarting others is the mark of true power, not brute force but tactical intelligence. The first step in outsmarting others is to observe. Most people are so focused on their own agendas, emotions, and actions that they fail to read the people around them. They don't see the underlying motivations or the tells that give away someone's true intent. To master the art of outsmarting others, you need to become a master of observation, learning to read body language, speech patterns, and even subtle shifts in behavior. By doing so, you gather crucial information that others don't even realize they're revealing. This gives you a tremendous advantage, allowing you to manipulate the situation in your favor. Once you've gathered information, the next step is to play the long game. Machiavelli emphasized the importance of patience in his works, and this is a critical aspect of outsmarting others. Don't rush into actions or confrontations. Instead, remain calm and collected, using strategic silence and delayed responses to keep your opponent on edge. Let them reveal more than they intend to. Let their impatience work against them, while you stay in control. This isn't about winning in the short term. It's about positioning yourself for the long-term advantage. Let's consider a practical example. Imagine you're dealing with a colleague who is constantly undermining your work in meetings, trying to take credit for your ideas or question your competence. The instinct might be to confront them directly, to argue and defend your position. But this is exactly what they want. By reacting emotionally, you give them the power. Instead, remain calm, collect your thoughts, and wait for the right moment. In the next meeting, drop a well-timed, factual statement that highlights their undermining behavior without directly attacking them. You've outsmarted them by shifting the frame without ever engaging emotionally. The ultimate goal of outsmarting others is to create a situation where you're always 2 steps ahead. You don't react to their moves, you predict them. 7. The power of indifference. In a world where emotions are constantly in flux, where people seek validation and recognition, indifference becomes an incredibly potent weapon. The ability to remain unmoved by the opinions of others, by their praise or their criticism, places you in a position of unparalleled power. It's not about apathy or coldness. It's about strategic detachment, knowing that your peace, your value, and your worth are not dependent on anyone else's approval or judgment. Machiavelli understood that those who are emotionally unshakable hold the real power. In his writings, he emphasized the importance of remaining indifferent to external pressures, because only then can you make decisions that are driven by logic, strategy, and self-interest, not by the whims of others. Indifference creates an emotional void that manipulative people and emotional manipulators can't fill. They can't use guilt, anger, or praise to control you because you simply don't care. Let's consider a scenario. You're in a professional setting and a colleague makes a pointed remark about your work, designed to undermine you or provoke a reaction. The usual response might be to get defensive, explain yourself, or even retaliate. But these emotional reactions give away your power. Indifference, on the other hand, sends a message that you are unaffected by their attempt to provoke you. You may simply respond with, "I'll look into it," or better yet, say nothing at all. By doing so, you remain in control of your emotional state. You've won without saying a word. Indifference doesn't mean you don't care about results or success. It means you don't care about other people's opinions or attempts to manipulate you. It means you don't get emotionally involved in petty conflicts or power struggles. You focus on the bigger picture, your goals, your values, and your path to success. In relationships, indifference can be equally powerful. When someone tries to guilt-trip you, demand your time, or manipulate your emotions, your ability to stay indifferent can immediately shift the dynamic. Indifference signals to them that you are not dependent on their approval or behavior to feel secure. You will only engage on your terms, and this kind of emotional independence forces others to respect your boundaries and your autonomy. Machiavelli's teachings are rooted in self-mastery and strategic emotional control. Those who can stay indifferent to the noise around them are the ones who define their own reality. When you stop caring about what others think, you free yourself from the chains of emotional manipulation and gain the clarity and control needed to make powerful decisions. The power of indifference is not about being disconnected or cold. It's about using your emotional independence as a tool to gain power over your environment, relationships, and decisions. Master indifference, and the world becomes your playground. One where you move with strategy and authority, unshaken by external forces. 8. The strength of strategic withdrawal. In the pursuit of power and control, one of the most overlooked but potent tactics is the art of strategic withdrawal. It's not about running away or conceding defeat, but about knowing when to pull back, let things cool off, and allow your adversaries to overstep or reveal their true intentions. This Machiavellian strategy is all about gaining power by choosing when and where to engage, and more importantly, when to withdraw completely from a situation. Machiavelli knew that one of the most powerful tools a ruler or strategist could have is the ability to choose the battleground. Often, victory is not about winning every confrontation. It's about controlling the timing of when to engage and knowing when it's best to leave a situation entirely. In the context of power dynamics, strategic withdrawal can create an emotional vacuum in the minds of those you engage with. Your absence, your silence, and your deliberate choice not to react can have a profound impact on how others perceive you. For example, let's say you're involved in a tense situation where someone is trying to provoke you, discredit you, or undermine your authority. The natural reaction is to defend yourself, to argue, to prove your point. But in doing so, you are merely feeding into their narrative. Strategic withdrawal, however, takes away their power. You walk away, you refuse to engage, and in doing so, you shift the balance of power entirely. The person who tries to provoke you is left in a vacuum, unsure of your next move. The uncertainty of not knowing whether or not you will return, or how you will respond, leaves them vulnerable. When you withdraw, you create space, not just physical space, but emotional space. You force others to reflect, to question their own behavior, and often, they will reveal more about themselves than they intended. The silence you leave behind does more damage than any words could. It exposes weakness, overconfidence, or manipulation that others are trying to mask. Strategic withdrawal is also an excellent way to manage energy. By pulling away from toxic people, draining situations, or unnecessary conflicts, you free yourself to focus on your long-term goals. You stop engaging in battles that aren't worth your time, and you conserve your strength for moments that truly matter. Machiavelli's idea was simple. To win in the long term, you must sometimes remove yourself from the game, and let others play themselves into mistakes. This gives you the advantage of timing, the power of absence, and the control to re-enter on your terms. By learning to strategically withdraw, you hold the cards, and those around you are left wondering how they can possibly move forward without you.